So I think we're live. I'm just a minute early here. I'm waiting for this screen to fix itself. So hang on just a second, guys. I need to make sure that I can see your comments, and welcome to the live. Let me just get this over here. Bear with me one second, guys. What's this? So this side of Facebook looks a little bit different than it normally does in different groups and stuff. Very interesting. Super interesting. Okay, so I'm going to make this big, and I don't see any comments yet, which is totally fine. So welcome, guys, to the Pandemic Puppy webinar. I'm Nicole Prince, and I own Pupgrade dog training, so I'm a dog trainer. I wanted to introduce myself a little bit and just tell you a little bit about myself, because I know that most of you are coming from other groups and you've never worked with me, or you've never seen me or anything else. Like our only contact is this webinar. So first of all, I want to say welcome, everybody, and I guess here I go with my introduction. So I'm a dog trainer in Oregon. I work in the Eugene-Springfield area, although I have clients just spread out in a multitude of places. And I specialize with behavior problems, so it's safe to say that I know quite a bit about what makes your dogs tick, where these behavior problems come from, how we can prevent them, and then of course how we can fix them. So some of the common behavior issues that I see, especially with pandemic puppies now, is reactivity. And so what this is when your dog overreacts to something, whether that's going to be barking, maybe they lunge at stuff, maybe they have a really low tolerance of people in the house, maybe they have fear reactions. So pretty much that's what I specialize with and what I work with a lot of the time. On top of this, of course, I do basic obedience, but the need for obedience type stuff is actually not quite the same as the need for some of the behavior stuff. We're seeing, as dog trainers, of course, we're networked with each other, so we're seeing trends pretty recently. We're seeing spikes in some of the trends of dogs being much more sensitive to things that they didn't used to be so sensitive to just a couple years ago. And it's coming down in their behavior. We're seeing more aggression, we're seeing more fear problems, we're seeing more reactivity. And we're also starting to see this in younger and younger dogs. For example, your dog who is 3 or 4 months old, we shouldn't really be seeing a lot of behavior stuff going on, especially not serious behavior stuff like what we would see in an older dog, simply because they're just so young. So that's part of where I come from. Oh, I didn't tell you guys the whole story. So I've also worked with sport dogs and high energy type dogs who most of you guys don't have a lot of familiarity with those types of breeds, like the real working breeds, and which is good, by the way, because they don't make very good pets. So I've seen it all, as far as having dogs who really have these strong working urges and need to work or else, as well as dogs who are more low-key and just sort of laid back, and they don't really need so much to do. So I've gone through the whole spectrum. It's really a blessing to have worked such a wide variety of dogs like that. And I found my happy place in, not that I don't like doing obedience and stuff like that, but I found my happy place is definitely more in working with behavior, because it can be so life-changing, not only for owners, and we'll get into that in just a little bit too, but for the dog. Like if we have a dog who is very fearful, or they just have issues, and they've had these issues for a long time, like they're 2 or 3 or 4, and they've always been this way. They've always had these fears. Think about how stressful that is for a dog to have. And so it's not fair. It's not fair for the dogs to live like that. And it's not fair, of course, for their owners to live like that, because with dogs who have aggression problems or fear issues, it's definitely stressful. And it puts restrictions on your life. And I've known that firsthand. One of my personal dogs was a reactive dog. And of course, you know, she's gone through a lot of training now. So she's still sensitive to things, but she's not reactive. And she's definitely, if you were to see her out in public, her responses to stuff is nowhere near what a lot of people would consider to be reactive. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. And let's get into puppies. Let's talk about puppies. So there are a lot of misconceptions about puppies, like a lot. And unfortunately, it gets everybody into hot water. It's not only bad for the puppies, but it's usually bad for the people too, because these misconceptions, they can hinder you when it comes to training, or when it comes to picking which puppy you actually want, or when it comes to any of those types of things. You can be held back by some of these misconceptions. And one of the ones that I see so much, like I just see it all the time, has to do with potty training. A lot of people think that their puppy will tell them when they have to potty, and they'll tell them, they'll inform their owners, like, hey man, I have to potty, or I have to do something, please let me out. And then there's some frustration when it turns out that your dog they don't know. Like, they don't know they have to tell you. They don't even know that it's a problem for you if they pee on the floor. And part of this comes from, you know, how the puppy's whole existence up until then. Most puppies at the breeders, they're going to be kept in a certain area. That might be rotated. Puppies might be allowed to go outside, or they might go on trips outside the house or things like that. So there might be some variables for the puppy, but puppies are not raised for good reason. With your breeder, your puppy is not going to be raised just loose in the house. That's not how any breeder does it. And hi, I see you. So there's this misconception that puppies will just sort of know not to potty in your house. But their whole existence up until that point has been, you know, I potty in this certain area, which is going to be near where the puppies, you know, live, and it'll just sort of be away. Most breeders are not training their puppies to, you know, oh, tell me when you need to go out and I'll let you out the door, and I'll let you go outside. The amount of work that would have to be put into puppies at 8 weeks to know that is astronomical. That being said, a lot of puppies are like litter box trained, or they know, you know, they know instinctively not to make messes where they sleep or where they eat. However, when you bring your puppy into your house, the house is so large, especially if you give them that much freedom of just free range of the house, that they don't really know where it is that they can potty. And also, they don't know where you're going to be feeding them or anything like that. So they just sort of pick a likely spot. And for most of us, our houses don't smell like dog potty areas, so the dog doesn't know where. And at the same time, at 8 weeks, your puppy's body is still developing in a lot of different ways. And one of those ways is with their bladder control, their bladder and bowel control. And so your puppy doesn't always know that they have to go. And this is really evident. I'm sure some of you with puppies have noticed, like, you'll be playing with your puppy, everything is going great, and suddenly your puppy just pees everywhere. Like, they just go pee. Like, almost no pause in the play or anything. And that's simply because, like, the puppy is doing something else, they don't realize they have to go. and then and it becomes an issue, so they're like, oh, I guess I have to pee, and they end up peeing. And of course, for a lot of people, this is supremely frustrating, very, very frustrating for people. And the easiest thing to do in any of these situations is to realize that your puppy, number one, doesn't know where they're supposed to go. They have no idea that they're supposed to tell you that they have to go. And they're not developed enough to really hold it so effectively. And of course, there's a misconception. People always tell me, well, my puppy holds it fine throughout the night. It's like, well, so do you. So do you. Like when you're asleep, your metabolism changes. So you're not going to be making messes. So same thing with puppies. When their metabolism slows down, like when they're asleep, they don't have to really wake up usually to pee. When you have a very young puppy, it's a good idea to take them out in the middle of the night. But that's not something that you'll have to do permanently or anything like that. So the easiest thing to do with potty training, and the thing that everybody should be doing, like first of all, there shouldn't be any corrections, like yelling at your dog or scolding them or anything like that is not going to teach them not to pee there. It's just going to make them careful. You're going to be like, ooh, I can't pee when my human's around because bad things happen. And that's where I see people shooting themselves in the foot all the time when they're trying to potty train their dog. So instead, you just need to put your dog in a schedule. So, every 30 minutes, every 45 minutes, you just take your puppy out to where you'd like them to go. And then once they go, you can bring them back inside, or you can play with them out in the yard or something like that. And it's simple things like this where people don't know how to do it effectively. Like they don't know how like a trainer would do it or anything like that. And it builds this frustration in the people. And it can be very frustrating. I mean, I don't like cleaning up messes any more than you guys do. I'm not used to it. I'm not impervious. However, that motivates me. The knowledge of, oh yeah, I might have to clean up a mess if I make a mistake, motivates me to take out the puppies more often, or to keep track of, like, write myself a note, like, oh yeah, he just peed at XYZ time, and to actually get them pottied where I want them to potty. And so potty training, when we talk about this, it's purely habit. 100% of it is habit. And it's not any more complicated than that. If your dog has habitually peed out in the yard because you've taken them out frequently enough, then they're going to develop a preference for that. If there have been mistakes where the dog wasn't taken out enough, that wasn't taken out frequently enough at all, you're going to be paying for that by having a much longer period of time for your dog to become potty trained, if at all. I've seen dogs who they weren't well trained, but then 8 months down the line, 12 months down the line, they don't know how to go outside. Like they'll just potty in the house. So with your young puppies, definitely you'll have to pay attention and get them on a potty schedule and get them moving, get them outside the house. So that's just some tips and tricks. If any of you guys have any questions at any point in time, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I should be able to see them. And hi everybody, by the way. So drop them in the comments. Tell me about your puppies. Tell me their names. What breeds do you guys have? Where are you guys coming from? Like where are your puppies coming from, I mean. Not where you guys are coming from. And let me know. Let me know. Because I mean, I'm here to answer your guys' questions about your puppies and make things at least a little bit easier for what you're going through. So, potty training, that's pretty much hands down one of the top priorities on people's minds when it comes to their puppies. So going back to when we bring a puppy into our house, there's a lot of misconceptions about what your puppy is going to know, how they're going to respond to things, and another place that this comes out is mouthing and nipping. There's a lot of misconceptions with this. Some people think that their puppy is aggressive, or their puppy is trying to be dominant, or their puppy is doing whatever it is. Hygiene. And so that's totally not true. Like, we could talk, dominance theory is for a different webinar. I'm not really going to go into much detail about dominance and the whole misconception there, because it's 100% a misconception. But what I do want to teach you guys is that your puppy is going to interact with the world with their mouth, because they're like a little toddler. You know how toddlers like have to touch everything and they put their fingers on stuff? Well, puppies do that, except with their mouth. And they want to see if it's good to chew. They want to see, what that thing is. So they just mouth it. Whether that's going to be your fingers or your clothing or your shoes or stuff outside or whatever it is, your dog is going to mouth it. Additionally, when we look at how puppies behave when they're in the litter with their family, let's talk about how they interact with each other. How do I get the attention as a puppy of my brother or sister over there? How do I tell them that I want to play? Well, I'm going to bite them. I'm going to use my teeth, and I'm going to bite them, and then they're going to turn around and be like, what the hell was that? And I'm going to be like, hey, let's play. And then they start playing with each other. So your puppy's pretty much their only communication tool, and one of the only things that they've been using, really, since they've been born, is their mouth. So that's another area where there's a lot of misconceptions about what you should do when your puppy mouths you, or how do you get your puppy to stop. It's definitely not like by going like this and being like, ow, and like pulling away. Like, that's a very exciting response, number one, for your puppy. And they're likely to try it again because you did something, and you did something different than what you normally do. So people think that I've had people tell me so much things about, wow, and I see stuff just on the internet floating around, like my puppy's so aggressive, and my puppy this and my puppy that, and the truth of the matter is, you just have a mouthy puppy, and you're probably doing things that are encouraging that. So, Jean, tell me about your puppy. Tell me about Riker. Did you get him from a breeder? Was he from a rescue? Are you guys having any issues so far? He's probably really cute. Post a picture. I would love to see. Anyhow, so when we are actually trying to teach our dogs, or our puppies, not to bite our hands, this is actually something that people, they just don't know how to do it. So I'm going to show you. So I have a toy here. And this is the kind of toy that I'd want you guys to get, something like this. A lot of toys in the pet store are not suitable for young puppies. We want it to be kind of floppy, and we want it to be kind of soft, like this is made out of fleece. And this is, in the length too, I want you guys to think about the length of this. So it's not like short. So the idea is you should be able to hold one end of this, and your puppy is going to grasp the other end. So the teeth are going to be way over here, and they're not by your hands. So there's a couple reasons why exactly we want something like this. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you're looking for a puppy toy to use to teach your dog not to nip you, this is something you would use. And I know some of you are probably like, well, Nicole, that's kind of weird. Like, how are we going to use a toy to teach your dog not to nip us? And the trick of it is, you're going to teach a dog how to play appropriately with you. Because they're just trying to play with you, and they're trying to get your attention, how they have learned how. They've been nipping their litter mates. They probably have nipped their mother for attention, and they want to play. So instead of letting them having some big reaction of, ow, that hurt, you got me, and of course it's going to hurt because their teeth are like needles. So instead of having that kind of reaction, we would want to establish that, hey, we can play this really fun game, like it's super, super fun, except we have to use this toy, And the conditions of us playing is that you mouth the toy and not me. So that's another thing that I see people do is they will allow their dog to either mouth them or nip them or, oh God, there's more comments and I've been missing them. Okay, great. So there's people who will their puppy will mouth them and then they will go play with the puppy, and that's totally backwards. Because your dog has just learned, if I mouth you, if I put my teeth on you, you're going to play with me. And that's not what we want to teach them. We want to teach them that they should only be mouthing the toy. So that's why it's important to establish set play times and to really do that from the get-go. Because I promise you, your puppy is going to nip you. It's what they know. That's all they know. And so if you don't want to be nipped, you have to teach your dog what to do instead. Telling them no, telling them not to do that or cut it off, or like trying to stop them from doing that isn't teaching them what you'd like. Because at the end of the day, we do want them to interact with us, and we do want them to play with us, and we want it to be appropriate. So that's why we'd want to direct them onto a toy, and then we'd actually want to play with them with that toy. I hear owners all the time telling me, oh, we have so many toys for our puppy, but he doesn't play with them, or he doesn't do this, or he just doesn't do that. And there's this misconception that, oh yeah, I'll buy a bunch of toys for my dog, he'll play with them, and I'll be able to do my own thing and sort of ignore the dog unless I want to play with him. And unfortunately, you can't. Your puppy is very, very quickly going to realize that, oh, my toys are boring when I am solo. Because again, remember, your puppy grew up in an environment where he had playmates and he had people to play with and interact with. And so when he comes home to you, even if you have another dog or you have some cats or you have children or whatever it's going to be, giving your puppy toys and being like, go free, go play, is not really helpful when it comes down to them actually having fun doing those things and actually wanting to do those things. And that's where people run into trouble, because we can see a whole bunch of other stuff come up when your puppy gets bored. Boredom is a great creator of behaviors that we don't want to see in our puppies, like jumping, chewing on stuff, destructive things in the house, playing inappropriately with other animals or members of the family. Boredom is great when it comes to making all those things we don't want to see. Which sort of goes into my next topic here that I have for you guys. Another big mistake that people do is they give their puppy too much freedom, way too much freedom. Like you bring the puppy into your home and you're like, okay, here's my house, good luck. And the problem with this is there's probably about 5 million things that a puppy can do that are wrong, that we don't want them to do. But there's only about maybe 30 things that we actually do want them to do. Like we want them to be calm, we want them to only chew on certain items, we want them to potty outside, we want them to be quiet, we want them to tolerate people coming in and out. So the list of things that we want our dogs to do is very short. And it's way easier to teach your dog what you want them to do than to, a week or two later, be trying to fix something that they're doing, of the plethora of possibilities it could be that they're building a habit with. So what I tell everybody, and how I raise puppies, and how most trainers will tell you to raise a puppy, is we have to restrict them a little bit. And there's a number of ways to do this. You don't have to have a crate. You don't even have to have a pen. You don't even have to have baby gates. But you still need to restrict the dog a little bit. So you can do that with a leash, or you can do that with any of the other tools I just mentioned. So using a crate, using like a playpen for the puppy, using baby gates around your house so that the dog is restricted to certain areas or they're easier to watch. I don't know of a single trainer or a single like professional like dog industry person who raises puppies loose, because as I said, it is so hard to police them 100%, because that's essentially what you'd have to do, is you'd have to be policing them 100% of the time. So no bathroom breaks, no time to cook, no time to do anything, because you're busy policing the dog. And if you don't police them, I assure you, they're going to find something to chew, they're going to find somewhere to poop, they're going to do something that could actually be potentially dangerous. So, if we use restriction, whether you have the puppy leashed to you or near you or in an area of the house, or whether they're in a pen or maybe they have a section of the yard, this is so powerful when it comes to not only preventing our dogs from learning the things that we don't want them to learn, but also saving you a lot of effort. The amount of work it would take to puppy-proof a house is huge. It's just massive. And you know, on that note too, just the other day I saw a story about somebody's puppy. I don't know if the dog survived. I don't know. But apparently they had like some sort of rodent bait that they had forgotten about. And the puppy, of course, being a puppy, found it, because your puppy is going to find everything, I promise you, if they're given full range. And of course, something like that can be very damaging. Even if a dog survives being poisoned by accident, they can still have lifelong internal problems because of that. And that's only one example of something that can go terribly wrong. Even certain houseplants can make your dog sick. Of course, we all have electronics, so your puppy chewing on cables, that's not a good day. And some of these things either are not easy to move, so maybe you do have a large plant collection. I mean, you can see I have plants. Or maybe you do have a lot of different electronics. That would be something where you can't always move those easily. You can't always fix that thing. Or if you have plants in your yard or rocks, that's another common thing that puppies sometimes start to chew on, is they want to chew on rocks or things like that. And it's very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. So when we use a pen or when we use a crate or when we have our dog leashed or things like that, we're immediately cutting down on the amount of danger and on the amount of accidents that can happen with the dog. So, and that's something that people are so eager to give their puppies a lot of freedom, which is great. We can work towards that goal, but at the same time, your puppy is going to take the freedom and run with it. And they're also, most puppies don't know their name when they come home, so you can't call them, you can't stop them from doing something unless you're like over there and stuff like that. So managing your puppy, having a good setup in your house is really, really key. Having some sort of structure like that is, I promise you, it may seem like it's a hassle now, or like you may be struggling with, okay, well, how do I get my puppy to calm down in a crate or calm down when they're alone or something like that. There, of course, are things that we do to make that easier as well for our dogs. And that goes into the realm of how do we train our dogs to like that kind of thing and to tolerate being alone and stuff like that. But that's a little bit of a deeper topic that we might not get into today. Okay, so if there's any questions, like I said, go ahead and drop them down. And then the next topic, moving right along here, that a lot of people forget about is that puppies are always learning. And in fact, every single dog is always learning. If your dog is awake, they're learning. And there's a lot of things that they can pick up and a lot of things that they can learn that we don't necessarily want them to learn. One of those can be, for example, a sensitivity to people or sensitivity to things in the environment. So maybe the dog doesn't like the mailman coming by, or doesn't like people passing on the street, or whatever it's going to be. Those can be things that your dog can get sensitive to. And it's also very common for puppies to learn that from older dogs very quickly. So if you have an older dog who has some problems or just like some behavioral stuff going on where they're uncomfortable in certain situations, or they don't like strangers, or just on and on down the list of whatever it could be, your puppy is really likely to learn those things. And it's really a shame because it makes the work for you when you go to train your puppy, or when you take your older dog to training, or whatever you're doing. It makes that work so much harder for you guys. Because now you're having to address it with two dogs, and it could have actually been prevented in the puppy depending on how they were introduced into the environment and what all went down. And speaking about that, there's actually been some really interesting research that just came out, I want to say like last month, where they did a study on dogs, obviously, on puppies to test and see if it mattered, if the age of the puppies mattered when it came to training. And what they found is that with puppies, definitely younger is better. They started to see a very clear difference between puppies who were 4 months old and puppies who were a year old, or excuse me, not a year old, 5 months old. So even between just a month different in age, we already had differences in their behavior as far as how successful they became in their training down the line, and whether or not they had behavior issues like having fear problems or nervousness problems or other reactivity type issues, which for me as a trainer, that's super interesting. And it also supports what we as trainers have known for a long time, which is the sooner you get training, the better. So management, as I was saying, definitely very important when it comes to the safety of our puppies and ensuring that we're actually going to have like a good and the easiest possible puppyhood that we possibly could. Puppy blues, I don't know if you guys know what that is, but that's like it's kind of like a depression or regret that you have a puppy. And it's just sort of negative feelings surrounding like the puppy. And it comes from being stressed out and not quite knowing perhaps what you're doing, or having a situation where raising the puppy is difficult. And we can make that easier just by using some restriction and using some management with our puppies. So, like I said, it's something that I see dog owners not do, and it bites you in the butt. It really will come and bite you in the butt. So that's something that I want you guys to think about. Like, how can I restrict my puppy from doing XYZ thing that they do that I don't like them to do? Or maybe you don't want your puppy to develop that as a habit, so you don't want them to chase cats, or you don't want them to jump on people. There's all sorts of different ways that we can use to restrict our dogs from learning to do that, but also stop them from doing that if they have those habits. Okay, let me get some more water, because as you all know, it's dry. I'm dry. Okay. So first things first that I would do if I was having a puppy, I would make sure that I'm actually prepared for it. And let me tell you guys a story. I'm going to tell you guys a story about when I got my puppy, because I have a puppy right now, his name is Fruit. You guys have probably seen pictures of him, or maybe not. He's a little Rottweiler puppy, and so he's the newest addition to my family here. And I had to get him from Arizona, actually. So I made the drive from Arizona, from Oregon to Arizona in February. It was very exciting, super fun. I had a blast. My dogs had a blast. I of course, took my dogs with me. And the reason that I was able to do that, and the reason that the way that I made it easier for myself, is I made sure that I always had a plan for what I was going to do with the puppy. So he rode with me in the front seat. He rode next to me in a tote bin. And I wish Facebook had this is one of those times where I wish there was screen share, because I could show you guys pictures. This is very cute. He rode with me in a tote bin in the passenger seat, because he was still small enough to be able to fit in something like that, and he couldn't climb over the sides. And of course, he was 8 weeks old. So at that age, he was doing a lot of sleeping still, which was perfect, because I had to drive all the way from Arizona back into Oregon. And so it was a long drive, to say the least. So I had to plan on how was I going to have him in the hotel, because I stayed at some hotels on my way back. And I had to also plan for, how am I going to do this with multiple dogs? Because it wasn't just him that I had. I had my other dogs with me, because I had to take them with me. And so if I didn't have a crate, that would have been a nightmare, like an absolute nightmare. How do you pay attention to what's happening with a puppy when you're asleep in your bed, right? So having a crate in that situation made all the difference, of course. It was very helpful, and it's something that people sort of neglect when they're at home. And one of the big things, too, about having a crate for your young puppy and sort of getting them to be calm in it when they're sleeping, one of the tricks that I do is when I have a puppy and I just like they're a new puppy, whether that's my dog or whether that's a client's dog, they're always crated right next to where I'm sleeping. So literally I can have my fingers like in the crate if I have to, or I can talk to the puppy if I have to, and I can be there to comfort them. Because once again, let's look at this from the puppy's perspective. You swoop down out of nowhere, a complete stranger, you pick them up from the breeder, and then you take them away from everything they've ever known. You take them away from their mother, you take them away from all their siblings, and in a lot of cases, these puppies are going to homes that don't have any other dogs. So your puppy's world that they've known for the first 8 weeks of their life, or for some of you even younger, totally gets shifted and turned upside down. So the least that you can do for your puppy is have them crated right next to your bed. Like literally, when I say right next to your bed, I don't mean in the room like over there. I mean like when I get out of bed, I have to go around. Like I can't just get out of bed because the crate's in the way. That's where I put the crate. And then at the same time, if there's something wrong with the puppy, if they start crying or anything like that, I'm super likely to wake up and hear them rustling around or need something from me. So that's why I put the crates right there. And in that first couple weeks, of course I'm taking the dog out in the middle of the night, and I planned for this. Like it's not a, while I was at the hotels, I specifically talked to the owners there, and I said, hey, while I'm here, I have a young puppy. I know I'm going to be pottying him during the night. Can you put me in a room that's away from other people, so when I get up in the middle of the night to take this puppy out, I don't wake other people up by the door closing and stuff like that. So it's planning like that, where you have to sort of think ahead on how am I going to tackle this with my puppy instead of just trying to wing it. So crates definitely are super handy for this, and it allows you, especially at night, to make sure that your puppy is in one location. They're not waking up, peeing in a corner, and then coming back over to where you were. Or God forbid, if they're on the bed, they're going to pee on your bed while you're sleeping, which is not what I would think is on anybody's, not something you want. So there's definitely things like that where having a crate, having a pen, it makes your life much easier, much easier. And how we set it up can make things easier for us as well. So in those first couple nights, I was feeding him. I was feeding my puppy in the crate. He didn't know how to go really in or out of one, and I wasn't expecting him to know that either because he's a puppy. He doesn't know very much of anything. So I would just put his food in there, and he'd go in the crate, and then I would shut it, and he'd be in there with the door shut while he finished his food. And then, of course, when he was done with his food, I opened the crate so the dogs don't feel trapped in there. Because that's another mistake that people do with a crate, is they get a crate or they get a pen or they get something like that, and there's no, it's very, just sort of the empathy disappears, and the dog is just put in this situation where they have no control over it, and of course they're not going to like it, especially if you're forced to do it. Like, can you imagine, let's pick something normal that people have to do. Imagine if you had to go to the dentist, and every time you made an appointment, they would have people break into your house, kidnap you, and like take you to the dentist and strap you down and force you to go through that. You would hate the dentist. And some of you don't really like the dentist right now either. But just think about how much worse that would be if your choice and your agency in the matter is stripped away from you. It makes it a lot harder. And unfortunately, that's how some people approach crate training. And it's not your fault. Or the people who make those mistakes, it's totally not your fault, because nobody's taught you how to do it in a better way, and nobody's taught you how to do it, humanely, and how we would do it, like how a trainer would do it. We definitely don't just put the dog in some sort of confinement and then, good luck, dog. Like, that's not at all how it happens. It's very incremental and stuff like that. So it's broken down so that the puppy understands, and so that you're able to grow those successes. So the only time that fruit was crated was when we were in the hotels and when we were doing that. Otherwise, he was, like I said, he was very young at the time. He was 8 weeks old, so he spent most of his time sleeping anyways. And of course, we spent a lot of our time driving. So he was next to me, just in his tote bin, and I could stick my arm in there for him, and he had some chews. But for the most part, as a young puppy, he was still sleeping 18 to 20 hours a day. So the drive was really easy for us as when I picked him up. And then afterwards, when I brought him home, that sort of continued. He wasn't given a lot of freedom because he doesn't know how to act around the house. And especially, I have two other dogs as well, and they were very large compared to him. Like, he was just a small puppy. So the interactions between them, like, my girls made it very clear, you're a puppy, you're kind of obnoxious, we don't want to play with you, and we don't really want anything to do with you right now. And they made that very clear. So it's my job then, and your guys' jobs, this is owners, to also help support that. And that's something where when we have people bringing puppies into their house, and when we have things like that happening where the family dynamics are changing, a lot of the time, the other animals in the family, whether it's dogs, whether it's cats, their desires go not only unheard, but unsupported. And it creates a lot of problems. One of the biggest things, too, that I get people contacting me with is when they have issues with their new puppy and other animals in the house, whether that's going to be the other dog that they have, whether that's going to be the cats that they have, or maybe their puppy is messing around with their livestock. That all comes down to how is the dog introduced to those things and what were they allowed to do. So when we talk about what your dog is allowed to do, once again, it circles back around to the amount of freedom that that dog has had. So the first few weeks, he was, let's see, Fruit was exposed to the girls and he could see them, and there was a little bit of interaction, but I always took the side of my older dogs 100% of the time. If my older dogs were like, hey, we don't like that and that's too much, or I'm not playing with you right now and I don't have any patience for you, of course I'm going to remove the puppy from that situation. Number one, because I don't want there to be a fight. And number two, it's not the responsibility of my girls to discipline or to correct him or to sort things out by themselves. Like, they've already told him, hey, we don't want to play with you. And the next step for a dog to do is to escalate that. Of, hey, you didn't get my message, so now I'm going to bite you. Or now I'm going to really tell you that we don't do that. And that can cause issues in your puppy. That can cause them to become defensive. So next time there's a couple of interactions like that with an older dog, well, now they start feeling a little bit threatened themselves. Like, man, the old guy doesn't like me and I don't feel safe around him. Depending on what kind of puppy, it could actually do the opposite. It could make your puppy more persistent, because some puppies are like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, and they go and they try to, they're called appeasement behaviors. They go and they try to make nice with the older dog, but the making nice means they have to get into the older dog's space, and of course the older dog does not want that, and they say, get away from me, and the puppy's like, oh, I'm sorry again, and they try to make nice, and it just sort of gets in this cycle, and it's not productive. So I don't allow dogs to figure it out themselves, because it's not helpful, and there's definitely a possibility of somebody getting hurt, and there's definitely a possibility of the old dog's patience wearing out. And then I also, for me in particular, I have to preserve how my dogs act. Like, because I use my dogs in training sometimes. Sometimes I need a dog to help a client dog. And so if my dogs have strong reactions to other dogs, or they really, they have things going on where they don't feel comfortable around other dogs anymore, then I can no longer use my dogs in those situations. So for me in particular too, there's that added risk of, is this going to be the dog who finally makes my dog say, I've had enough, and I don't have any more patience for any other dogs. So ultimately what I want you guys to think about is really, how do I set up my house in a way that works for me? How do I use a baby gate in my house? Would a baby gate work for me? Would a pen work for me better? Would a crate be the best option? Because that's all up to you. You have all these different options available to you. And it's part of my job to help you guys figure out what options would work, what the options are, and potentially what options would work best for you. But at the same time, it's really up to you guys to implement something and to figure out what it is that would be best for you. Like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be a crate. It doesn't have to be a pen. It can be a leash. You can have your puppy leashed with you. But the overarching theme here is there does have to be some level of restriction. If you don't have restriction, if you don't feel comfortable restricting your puppy from things, well, I hope you're comfortable with having to train things later, train more things than you'd potentially want. It makes a lot more work for you, down the line if you don't use some sort of restriction with your puppy. Especially when you're raising the puppy, it's nearly impossible to watch them 100% of the time. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. It's nearly impossible. And I see owners try to do it all the time. And then they get so frustrated because it's like, oh, I'm having to micromanage my puppy, and every time I turn my back, he goes and does X, Y, Z, and you don't get a moment to yourself anymore. And it makes the whole situation of having a puppy so much more stressful than it needs to be. It doesn't need to be that stressful, and it doesn't need to be that hard. There's definitely an easy mode for puppies, and a lot of people miss out. And on top of that, on top of the missing out, they make more work for themselves. So that's pretty much all that I have for you guys in this live. I see that we had some people and no questions, but that's totally okay. So I don't have anything additionally for you guys. I think that covered about everything. Prevention really is king in training. I would much rather only have to teach a dog 2 or 3 things than have to fix 2 or 3 problems on top of teaching a dog all these other skills. So more owners don't realize this. There's a lot of misconceptions to do with puppies and a lot of just issues with it. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I will make the next live surrounding them. Of course, you know, I'm here in Eugene and Springfield. If you guys want some more focused help on your exact problems, let me know. Get in contact with me. I'm not a very hard person to reach. Reach out and talk. I'm here, and I'm here to help you guys and make things easier. And of course, you know, prevent problems from developing, right? I think that's on the list of all of us. So it was great talking with all y'all. It was great hosting this live. I'm very excited to teach you guys more about dogs and teach you guys more about just the best practices so you could actually get out of the rut of like these small problems and get on with training your dog to do the things that you want to do with them. So you can go live your life with them. So you can go take them camping with you. So you can go do some kayaking with them. Or really any of the other reasons why you got your dog, right? But you have to break out of these little problems at home before you can get to living life with them. So get in touch. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next one.